This is Let's Talk Teens, a parenting podcast sharing tips on raising amazing teenagers. We are both certified life coaches that have worked with teenagers as coaches, mentors, and teachers. We are sharing what we have found to work best when dealing with teens and tough issues. This is Let's Talk Teens with Abbi and Cheree, episode 37, Your Teen and Phones, part 1.
Abby, I think this is a topic that every human being that owns a phone needs, right? Not just teens. So we're going to focus toward teens, but parents, us, we can all learn something as we navigate this topic together.
It's a good self-check, right?
It is. Now, I also like to just start off by when we approach topics like this that are a little tricky and they're hard, and I think as moms and dads, we get in our brain about like what's the right way and what's the wrong way. I think we need to be cautious that we don't go forward with it and enter it in a fear mode of like, I'm gonna like ruin my kid or I'm gonna do this wrong but really just like, okay, we're gonna educate ourselves. We're gonna do the best we can with it. There's, I don't know, I haven't yet found the perfect way to navigate phones. So these are just some tips and some ideas and some things we want to talk about. And then do your best and just know that like we learn. So if it doesn't seem like it's, you know, I don't know, we're doing it right. I hate that word. It's just like I'm doing it and learning. We're all learning. We're all learning as we go along. So I just like to say that. Okay. Okay. One thing I think that we all know, but just need to be reminded is that as we use our phones, as our teens use their phones, they are created to be addicting, to
Mhm.
be addictive. I mean, all the social media, all the apps, like those people who create our phones and create the way they work, they are looking to distract us. They are looking to, they're engineered for addiction. They really are. And so we have to look at that as like, okay, this isn't because I don't have self-control or our teens don't have self-control. These people are smart in how they how they create our phones and the apps and our social media. So it is a battle that we have to know. But being aware of that they're engineered for addiction and designed for addiction, I think it just helps us to just know that so we can kind of watch it more cautiously and carefully. But I think some of the things that we know phones can be used for so much good. But I think one of the things as a parent of a teen that we need to watch for the most is that our teens tend to go to their phones to regulate their emotions or to distract themselves from their emotions, but it's not really a healthy regulation. It's just a distraction or a buffer is what we call it as coaches, of just an escape of trying to push off those emotions. And I think it's really good that we don't look at the phone as like, okay, this phone is bad, but when our teens are really sucked into their phone, it can just be this clue to us parents of like, okay, there's something going on and they're using their phone. They're using their phone as a distraction or an escape from something that is bigger than their phone.
Totally. And I even feel this in myself. Like I'll be working, typing away at the computer, and it's like this little bell goes off in my head that goes, oh, I want to check social media, right? Because I want a break, right? And so I think it is really powerful to know, okay, this is what's happening. Like I need a mental break. And so then we can be more conscious of those decisions. And I'm with you. I don't think these things are inherently evil. You have to know, okay, these are designed to make money, right? To keep my eyes on there, to keep, me looking at ads and all those kind of things. But we also need to know how our brain works, that this is a huge instant hit of dopamine and like reels and all these videos, which guess what? I love. I love to
They're
look at those.
fun.
I
They're
love the
fun. Yeah.
humor. They're so fun. But it is, a massive hit of that dopamine, that pleasure in our brain. And so, of course, we're going to want to pick it up. Of course, we're going to kind of have these moments in our day where we go, oh, time for me to get that dopamine hit. And so it's really powerful, like you're saying, to know, okay, this is what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. And I love it because they're so fun and it is just awareness. So one of the emotions that we buffer the most, which might surprise some of you parents, is actually boredom. We hate to feel bored. We don't know how to feel bored. We are stimulated so much in this world today and have so much that we're, just go, go, go mode. That's the American way, right? That we don't actually know how to feel bored. Now, that feels really uncomfortable to us to feel bored. And so we're looking, like you said, for that dopamine. We want to feel good. We want to escape it. We want to fix it. And so we often, when we're bored, we grab our phone. I mean, I bet all of us could go to the grocery store and stand in line to pay for our groceries, and almost everyone in line is on their phone while they're waiting, right? I
Mhm.
mean, we do that. We hate to feel bored. And so I think it's really important to let and to teach our teens and ourselves to actually sit in that discomfort, to sit in that boredom, to allow ourselves to be bored, which is so counterintuitive to our brains. And so just understanding that, like, how can we as parents, you know, you can teach your kids these things, and I think that's great. Sometimes they don't listen, but how can we ourselves start doing that? Like being, getting comfortable with that uncomfortable of feeling bored or not going right to our phone and noticing and being more aware and allowing that for our kids too, to just like know that it's an emotional buffer, know that it's a lot of times a boredom. And so, what we're trying to do instead of feeding that addiction or buffering those emotions is that awareness of like, okay, this is why I'm really wanting to go on my phone right now is I actually feel bored and I hate feeling bored. And I can get comfortable with this emotion of boredom. And it feels awful, right? Have you ever experienced that, Abby?
Oh, absolutely. And I am queen of like, well, let me do a million projects. Let me just be so busy. Um, I was thinking about how I was recently talking to one of my friends who's a licensed therapist, and talking to her about the work I do in life coaching and the work she does with her, clients. And what was amazing is she said, the problem with phones is that we use it as a buffer, which guess what? We use lots of things. We use food, we use
Absolutely.
TV, we like, fill in the blank. But she says with phones, what happens is instead of our brain, when we're feeling maybe discomfort because we're anxious or we are uncomfortable with how our friend interaction went, right? Or something our teen happened at school, and we're like, oh, instead of processing that, it's like we put it on the back burner when we have our phone, but it's like we've left the heat on it. So we never actually emotionally come down or get to solve that problem. And instead, we just now have a new heightened, it's like when you're cooking a million things for dinner and you're like, okay, I have this pot and this pot and this pot. Well, we've just pushed those off because I'm going to look at my phone. I don't have to think about this. I'm going to feel good for a little bit. And we never learn how to regulate our body to come back down and go, okay, let me sit in this discomfort. Let me mull over this in my head for a little while, right? All those ways help us solve some of that anxiety and some of those uncomfortable feelings of boredom, of, those emotions. But when we buffer with our phones, nothing goes away. We've just put that pot on the back burner, but the heat is still on.
I love that you brought that up because one of the things that has been scientifically proven over and over again is that if, as teens and young people, we don't get comfortable with sitting in that discomfort and answering that it goes on to adulthood, right? And then as an adult, we're constantly looking for an escape because we never learned to sit in that discomfort. We never learned to regulate that. And so parents, just so you know, when your teen thinks you're this bad guy and they're telling you that because you are having some phone rules, remember, like, you're giving them such a great gift because you're helping them learn to regulate their emotions. You're helping them like sit in that discomfort now so that they know how to and they can do it as an adult. Because there's so many of us adults who don't know how to sit in discomfort, who are constantly buffering, like you said, with way more things than our phone, because we don't know how to just sit in that and we don't know how to regulate our emotions. And so we're constantly turning to something for relief. So best gift ever is to actually like say no to your kids or help them regulate so they can learn it, right?
And parents, something that shocked me, and this might shock you, when I was, working with youth, pooling them on questions on their phone, I was picking up like language of like, oh yeah, I only have so much screen time, or I can't do this or this on my phone. And I had like this impromptu, I said, well, how many of you, like your parents regulate your phone use in some way? And every single hand went up. And I was actually shocked when, I was talking to these teenagers how much their parents were. And so, as a parent, you are not the odd man out to be regulating your kids' cell phone use. If anything, if you're listening and going, wow, I've never put limits on my teens' phone use or the apps, like this might be a little bit of a wake up call that every single youth that was in my classroom had some form of parental monitoring going on their phone. And I was like, this is awesome. This is a huge shift from when I had a cell phone as a young kid. Um, and so you are not the odd man out. It is not unique to your teen. They're gonna throw a fit. They're gonna tell you you're the meanest parent ever. But guess what? All their friends are getting monitored on their phone. So just own it, right? Own that you've got these rules, decide which ones. And I know, Cheree, we're gonna talk more about what we maybe suggest on phone use and how to help regulate this. But like own that because you aren't alone and talk to other parents who have teens and just see, okay, what's working for you guys? And each kid's different, right? But don't be afraid to set those rules on their phone.
And all your kids are going to probably, well, maybe not all your kids. Some of your kids might say, you're the only one that does this. And it's just not true,
It's
right?
not true. No.
It's just not true. I got to where I'd start saying, I guess I just love you so much more than your friends' moms love them. Maybe I've shared that before. But they like to throw that. But it is true. There are so many of us that know the importance of regulating. I just think it's important to bring up some of I mean, many of you parents already know this, but some of the problems that come along when phones aren't regulated at all. And remember, we're like wanting to help that. We want to help your teen regulate themselves and their emotions. We don't want to have to constantly regulate the phone. But as a learning, like in that learning, we might have to regulate the phone so they can learn to regulate themselves, if that
Hmm.
makes sense. But just some things to like help us understand. We've talked a lot about that dysregulation in our nervous system and just processing emotions. Um, so much proof that, too much phone use, too much social media creates more irritability and impatience. Makes sense. The increase of anxiety and depression is so huge when we're on our phones too much. And I noticed that even in myself when I try frequently to take a little social media break and get off social media for like a week at a time. And it's crazy how much better I felt. Not at first. Like at first, it's like your brain's freaking out on you, right? Because you're going off social media and you realize how much you just want to go to that like Instagram button or Facebook button or
Yes.
Snapchat or whatever. And then you're like, okay, this is like shows how addicted I am to it. And you get, past like 24, 48 hours and you feel like a new person. It's amazing. And so just like knowing that it really does create a lot of anxiety and depression and that the numbers in our world are so high. And I personally believe that our phones have a lot to do with that.
Well, and to add to that, Sheree, like sometimes we hear that so often that we're like, why? Why? And with teens specifically, it's been linked to the comparison factors that happen. I'm comparing my body to this influencer's body. I am comparing my friend's summer vacation to my summer vacation. And just this discomfort, this they have so much, I have nothing. Like that is what's been linked to the anxiety and depression. Because sometimes if you're like me, you're like, I hear that all the time, but you're like, why? It's that comparison factor that's not good for us as human beings to look at maybe so much of the excess that's out there, right? That's something I've noticed with my little kids is they're on YouTube and I've banned YouTube from my house so many times because I'm so sick of the excess that you see. Like they have a Christmas tree in every color for every kid. And that's just not normal, right? And it's not good for our youth to see that and go, wow, I only have one pair of Nike shoes. Wow, what a loser am I? Like, and that's what goes through our head.
Yeah, and even as adults, I mean, we must because I think everyone puts, their best life on social media or all the good things. And it's just, even when you are not trying to compare, I think it's just hard not to. So I think
Mhm.
it's so true. Another thing that has been linked to our phones is poor sleep and not being able to actually get into a place where we can relax. We're so overly stimulated. There's so many more. And so I think it's just what we really wanted to present on this episode is just the understanding that phones are something we need to be aware of. Phones are something that we need to help our teens figure out how to regulate themselves so that they can regulate their phones. We have to remember that teens are like learning to adult. So we don't want to, personally, I don't believe that we want to set all the limits and all the rules for them. And then they leave the house and they don't know how to regulate their phone or regulate their emotions. I don't really think that's the answer. So next in our next episode, we want to talk about some ways that you can help navigate screens and help your teen to learn how to regulate their phones and regulate their own emotions and what they're going through so they can start to own it. They can start to learn. So when they leave your house, guess what? They're going to have a better handle on it. And as all of us, it's, I think, a continual process of learning how to be the boss of our phone instead of our phone bossing us. But hopefully we can give you some tips that will help you out on that.
Thank you for listening to Let's Talk Teens with Cheree Murdock and Abbi Winslow. If you are looking for more tips to help your teenager, here's where you can find us. You can find Cheree Murdock on Instagram at Cheree Murdock Coaching or on her website, ChereeMurdock.com. You can find me, Abbi, on Instagram as Abbi Winslow or on my website, AbbiWinslow.com. Please rate and review our podcast and share with a fellow parent. Thanks for listening.